So, first question, what do you think about 2012? In the Buddhist era, it's 2556 or 2555. So, yeah, 2012 doesn't mean all that much to me. I guess the question you're trying to ask is, do you think the world's going to end this year? Or what do you think of these crazy people who think the world's going to end this year? I mean, the funny thing is that we have such a bad long-term memory that we forget that every 12 years or so we have this kind of end of the world panic, and it seems to be some sort of genetic fault of humankind. If you look in history, you'll see this again and again and again, that in all of Nostradamus's predictions, they predicted in this year or that year there would be this or there would be that based on Nostradamus's predictions, or this prediction or that prediction. Of course, in the year 1000, there were huge predictions about the end of the world and so on. And if you look at the Bible itself, it's just full of these. The apocalypse was supposed to come something like 20 years or within the lifetime of the people who had met Christ. And of course they had to kind of fudge that and reinterpret it, because obviously the end of the world didn't come. So this is some sort of it's actually, I think, as a result, it's fairly common in Judeo-Christian circles, or Christian circles, I guess, in particular Christian countries and Christian societies, because of the way the Bible is so worded. I heard of Christians who in the year 2000, of course, this big Y2K bug that those of you who are old enough to remember can remember how upset everyone was, or how concerned everyone was that this might be the end of the world. And I had heard of Christians who actually stopped eating or gave up their work and just gave everything up, because they thought for sure after 2,000 years this was the end. The end was coming. I spent the year 2000 with my uncle, and we were drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana, and then 5 days later, I remember that night quite well, apart from the fact that I was stoned and drunk. And we were sitting on my uncle's lawn, and we just watched the timer go. Of course, the other funny thing is that the year 2000, or the New Year, doesn't occur the same all over the world. But there we were sitting and watching the clock go, and then we say, "Wow, yeah, that's the year 2000." And but the funny thing is that this was 5 days before my life changed. So the world did kind of end for me, because 5 days later I went to practice meditation and just had a huge wake-up call to the realization that I was really on the wrong path and making a lot of errors in judgment and mistakes, just misunderstandings about what is progress and what is development and what is the path that leads to peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering. So from that day on, I haven't indulged in such things. Didn't take any more alcohol or drugs, or didn't get involved in anything in the world. 2 years later, I was a monk. But yeah, year 2000, count me among the skeptics, or the ridiculers maybe, because it's a little bit silly. But the one thing I wanted to say from a Buddhist point of view is that you'd have to have some pretty awesome karmic causes to bring about the consequences of the end of the world. To suddenly end the human race. I mean, it's one thing to explain a tsunami based on karma. It kind of makes sense, or it's plausible. Not that it makes sense, but it's a plausible you could plausibly come up with an explanation based on karma. But to come up with an explanation for the end of humanity based on karma is a little bit difficult. So I would say, yeah, the humanity is probably going to peter out and eventually disappear based on the changes in people's intentions and behaviors, and based on the gradual shift in karma or people's actions. I think the idea that anything changes suddenly, the point that we're missing is that change doesn't come suddenly, and this is a problem, a misunderstanding that occurs throughout our lives in all spheres of activity. We are constantly under the impression when something changes that it's going to change suddenly, that suddenly everything is going to going to change in a big way. And what we realize is that actually it happens gradually, that actually the things end up being a lot more the same than they do being different. And what we continue to see in the world is a mixture of good things and bad things, because the human realm in a Buddhist sense is the nexus, the joining point, because you can't become you can't become a Brahma, a god, from the lower realms. You can become an angel, but you can't leave the sensual sphere from the lower realms as an animal or in hell or so on. The best you can hope for is to become a human or an angel. And likewise, you can't go from the Rupa Vachara, the Rupa Bhuma and the Arupa Bhuma, the formless realms, the God realms. You can't go from there to become an animal, say, or you can't go straight to hell. You have to pass through the human realm. So it's somewhere in the middle. And I think it's always going to be as long as it exists. Of course, there are said to be times where the human realm doesn't exist, where there are no humans in existence. But during the time of the existence of humankind, it's going to always be a place of mixture of happiness and peace and suffering and turmoil, goodness and evil. And so that's what you tend to see in your own mind as a human being, and it's what you tend to see in the world around you, that the world always has good in it, and the world always has evil in it. They say in the suttas, they say there comes a time, or there will come a time sometime in the future, talking about apocalyptic prophecies, where the world will become a war zone, and people will have swords as a habit, will have weapons as a habit, or whatever weapons they use, it will be just something that everyone carries. Like today in some countries you see people walking down the streets with guns strapped to their legs. And of course there was a terrible catastrophe in America that I heard about just recently. That kind of hints at this sort of a state, the possibility of such a state where people just go into movie theaters and open fire on all of the guests. But they say this becomes the norm, and people just go around slaughtering each other and copulating with each other, not having any thought of propriety, of one's neighbor's wife and neighbor's husband and so on. They say the teacher's wife and so on. That's what the texts say. When one doesn't think about propriety and just copulation, rape perhaps becomes rampant as a matter of course, and as a norm. And so the world becomes a very horrible place. But at the same time, as this is all going on, there is a group of people who go off into the forest and say we don't want to kill. So the point being that there is still, even at that horrible, horrific time that's supposed to come sometime in the future, it's been prophesized, that even at that time there is said to be a substantial number of people who go in the opposite direction, leave home, leave society, go off into the forest and practice meditation, or just live a peaceful life, maybe doing chanting or prayer or whatever, and waiting out this horrific period. And eventually the people who are killing each other kill each other off, and it's not a very beneficial evolutionary trait to kill each other, to kill your own species. So they end up, what do you call, a dead end, I guess. I don't know what the technical biological or evolutionary term is. And those who go off in the forest and wind up being the more prolific, and eventually things take a turn around. And these people start to realize that this is actually a very important thing. They come to realize again the importance of not killing. How, logically it kind of makes sense. If you stop killing each other, your lifespan is going to increase, and you're going to what's the word, prosper, And so they start making rules again. They start developing morality. They say, let's keep this as a rule, not to kill people. And then eventually they make more rules and get back all of their morality and stop doing evil things, and as a result they prosper further and further, and then eventually another Buddha arises. This is what the Buddhist prophecy of the future is. And you can read about it in the Chakkavati Sihanada Sutta, I believe. Yeah, in the Digha Nikaya, no? I hope it's in the Digha Nikaya. I'm not the great scholar I should be. But a great sutta and very interesting prophecy of the future that rivals this whole 2012 thing, or puts the 2012 thing to shame because of its intricacy. It may not happen exactly as it's been prophesized, but you've got to admire the intricacy of it. It's not like just, hey, in 2012 suddenly the volcanoes are going to erupt and the meteor is going to hit and another planet is going to hit the Earth. Just these silly things and Mayan prophecies and end of calendars and so on. It actually is a lot more delicate than that, and you're going to actually see the decline of humankind first, and then an eventual return to glory. So that's my take on that sort of question and that sort of topic.